But every time you catch yourself before you explode, every time you breathe instead of argue, every time you pause before sending that impulsive message, you are reshaping your soul. You are training your spirit to lead. And slowly, you become someone who doesn't just live reactively, but redemptively. That is a powerful way to exist. To be easily offended is to hand over control of your inner life to the unpredictable behavior of others. Every look, every tone, every gesture becomes a potential threat, and you begin to live on high alert, fragile, guarded, and reactive. But to not be easily offended is to reclaim that power. It is to choose wholeness over hypersensitivity. It is the realization that not every comment is worth your energy, and not every perceived slight is an actual wound. You begin to walk through life with a thick skin and a soft heart, strong enough to remain unbothered, tender enough to remain loving. The truth is, offense is often rooted in ego. Voodoo. It arises when we take things too personally, when someone's words challenge our identity, question our status, or poke at unhealed insecurities. But the soul that has found its worth in something deeper, something eternal, no longer feels the compulsion to defend itself at every turn. Offense rolls off like water on stone. You don't internalize the moods and projections of others because you've learned to see them for what they are, reflections of them, not of you. You are free because you are no longer ruled by the opinions or moods of those around you. Being unoffendable doesn't mean you're indifferent. It doesn't mean you don't notice disrespect or dismiss wrongdoing. It means you've learned to separate behavior from identity, pain from intention. You can call something out without becoming enraged. You can confront without being consumed. The person who is not easily offended has mastered the art of discernment. They know what requires a response and what requires silence. They no longer waste their emotional energy on things that do not matter in the grand scheme of things. This way of living requires inner security. When you are confident in who you are, not in a prideful or arrogant way, but in a grounded, spiritual way, then insults no longer sting the same way. You are not desperate for validation, so when it is denied, you don't spiral. You're not desperate to be understood by everyone, so when you are misunderstood, you remain calm. This isn't coldness, it's maturity. It's the fruit of having done the inner work. You've faced your own weaknesses, made peace with your flaws, and rooted your identity in something higher than social approval. Offense is also often a test of how grounded you are. Every time someone says something that irritates you, you have a choice. Will you absorb it or observe it? The offended person absorbs it. They make it personal, emotional, dramatic. The mature soul observes it. They ask, why does this bother me? What wound is this touching? What can I learn from this? This self-awareness diffuses the emotional charge, and what could have become a source of division instead becomes a moment of growth. There is also a spiritual call in not being easily offended. It's a call to grace, a call to mercy. People offend out of ignorance, pain, fear, pride. When you are not quick to take things personally, you create space for compassion. You begin to see that most hurtful words are spoken by people who are hurting, that most rudeness is rooted in fear. You move from being a judge to being a healer, not by condoning bad behavior, but by refusing to become it. Your peace becomes your protest. Living unoffended is not about being passive. It is about being principled. It is strength under control. It is deciding that your joy, your clarity, your emotional state will no longer be hijacked by every careless word or misinterpreted tone. You realize that if you are easily offended, you will always be in emotional captivity. But if you learn to rise above, you will live from a place of holy detachment, not disconnection, but divine perspective. You see the higher road and you choose to walk it. Ultimately, the refusal to be offended is a spiritual discipline. It is a quiet defiance against the ego. It is a daily surrender of your right to be upset in exchange for the peace that surpasses understanding. It is not natural, but it is transformational. And as you practice it again and again, you will notice something profound. The very things that once stirred anxiety, anger, or defensiveness in you no longer hold power. You will begin to live freely, securely, and peacefully. That is the reward of emotional mastery. To understand projection is to awaken to one of the most liberating truths of emotional life. People often speak from their wounds, not their wisdom. Their criticism, coldness, sarcasm, or aggression are rarely about you. They are windows into their own unresolved pain, fears, and frustrations. When you truly grasp this, something within you shifts. You stop taking things so personally. You stop walking on emotional eggshells trying to manage other people's moods. Instead, you begin to view their behavior through the lens of compassion, not confusion. You don't absorb their poison, you witness it, filter it, and choose a higher response. Projection is what happens when someone unconsciously places their inner turmoil onto others. A person who feels inadequate may accuse you of arrogance. A person ashamed of their own dishonesty may accuse you of being deceptive. Someone afraid of abandonment may claim you're distant or disloyal. These are not reasoned evaluations. They are emotional reflexes. And if you're unaware, you may take these accusations to heart. You may start to doubt yourself, defend yourself, or even mirror their dysfunction. But when you understand projection, you begin to recognize what is yours to carry and what belongs to someone else. This doesn't mean you reject every criticism. Sometimes what others say does contain truth. But discernment allows you to separate projection from insight. Instead of reacting with anger or hurt, you can pause and reflect. Is this about me, or is this a mirror of their own struggle? That question alone can prevent countless emotional spirals. It allows you to stay anchored in clarity rather than drowning in confusion. Projection loses its power when you name it. When you see it for what it is, an emotional defense mechanism, it can no longer manipulate your peace. Understanding projection gives birth to mercy. You stop needing to retaliate. You no longer see others as enemies, but as people who are hurting and unaware. You begin to realize their anger isn't proof that you failed. It's proof that they're wrestling with something deeper. Their coldness isn't a reflection of your worth. It's a symptom of their own disconnection. Their false assumptions about you don't define you. They expose their lack of understanding. This awareness doesn't make you passive. It makes you wise. You respond with calm clarity instead of emotional chaos. When you understand projection, you also start catching it in yourself. You begin to notice when you're assuming the worst in others, when you're assigning motives without evidence, when your criticism is really about your own discomfort. You become more honest. You stop pretending you have everything figured out, and you begin to deal with your own inner life instead of unloading it onto others. This self-awareness humbles you, but it also strengthens you. Because the more you take responsibility for your emotional world, the less you rely on others to manage it for you. Living with this insight means you become less reactive in relationships. You don't jump to defend yourself every time someone projects. You don't spend hours trying to affix what someone falsely accused you of. You learn to stay rooted in truth, and you allow time to reveal what's real. So, sometimes silence is the best response, not because you're weak, but because you understand that arguing with projection only makes it grow. You let your life, your consistency, and your peace speak louder than your words. Understanding projection is a kind of emotional freedom. It allows you to stay present in challenging interactions without being controlled by them. You realize that someone's reaction to you may be about 1,000 things that have nothing to do with you at all. Their past, their pain, their perceptions. And when you truly believe that, you begin to show up differently. You don't match their energy. You hold your own. You don't take their storms inside your own heart. You simply observe, respond if necessary, and release the rest. At its core, understanding projection is about seeing people through the lens of grace. It's about recognizing that most emotional offenses are misfires, signals of internal wars that have nothing to do with you. It's not your job to fix or carry that burden. Your job is to stay grounded, stay kind, and stay true. And the more you do, the more unshakable you become, not because the world is kinder, but because your soul has become wiser. To anchor yourself in transcendent meaning is to live with a depth that no insult, inconvenience, or betrayal can uproot. You are not swayed by every shifting mood, passing offense, or fleeting circumstance. Your soul is fixed on something eternal, something bigger than your personal comfort or your momentary emotions. This is not escapism. It is the very opposite. It is grounding yourself in a truth so profound that the noise of the world begins to lose its grip. You don't live for approval, applause, or perfection. You live for purpose. And purpose gives pain its proper place. When a person lacks transcendent meaning, everything becomes a threat. A critical word feels like a collapse. A delay feels like a disaster. Discomfort becomes unbearable because there is no framework in which to interpret it. But when you are anchored in something higher, Whether that's divine purpose, eternal truth, or a calling greater than yourself, you begin to reinterpret hardship through a sacred lens. You no longer see it as pointless suffering, but as soul-forming fire. You don't panic at the pressure. You pause. You ask what it's shaping in you. You begin to see that even conflict can serve your growth. Anchoring yourself in transcendent meaning also makes you far less offended by others. Why? Because you see the moment not as isolated, but as part of a larger spiritual journey. The rude person in front of you, a test in patience. The betrayal you didn't expect, a lesson in discernment. The delay that frustrates you, a hidden opportunity to cultivate trust. You begin to realize nothing is wasted. When your life is submitted to something greater, even the painful moments carry hidden seeds of purpose. You stop reacting to everything as if it's personal, because you know that everything is part of a deeper narrative,